So, as we all well know, Boris has been going on a bit of a tour recently to try and unite the country. And he had a little stop-off in Manchester and essentially decided to, I'm going to do this for Manchester. This is going to be great. As usual, Boris talks about promises, and this is a case of we've heard this all before in the North, and the Tories never deliver on this. So, in fact, there was a really good article here which we're going to go through by Mary Crigag, I think that's how you say her name, but she's the Wakefield MP. And the title is, Manchester had a perfect response to Boris. They know his no-deal Brexit would lay waste to the North. Oh, go away, there we go. So, egotists like Trump, Johnson and Farage need the roar of the crowd to validate their egos. The most telling moment of Boris Johnson's speech on Saturday at the Manchester's Science and Industrial Museum was when he beseeched his audience. Feel free to applaud. His plea came after his re-announcement of the high-speed rail link between Leeds and Manchester, and more money for towns fell flat and was met with silence. And who could blame him? And who could blame the audience for shrugging at his cod Churchillian rhetoric? For them, it's just déjà vu. They were there in 2014 where George Osborne, the Chancellor, promised to make cities of the North a powerhouse for our economy again. Earlier this year, Osborne slammed the government's lack of vision, saying that it's hard to think of a single original idea that has come out of this Downing Street to advance the Northern powerhouse. Such has been the frustration in the North that 33 regional newspapers launched a Power Up the North campaign to hold politicians to account and rebalance the North-South divide. When the new Tory PM told them this time that he would be different, it's easy to understand their apprehension. This is the Boris Johnson who squandered 53 million of the taxpayers' money on a garden bridge that was never built. The same Boris Johnson who avoided the difficult issue of the Heathrow expansion with a harebrained fancy island airport whose contribution to London's infrastructure was not Crossrail that was planned and financed by a Labour government, but a bus that overheated and a cable car nobody uses. Manchester is a Labour-run city, founded on hard work, innovation and neighbourliness. Johnson talked of the streets being safe, affordable homes, jobs that pay good wages, and public services that support families and the vulnerable. But we know that charm and conviviality are not substitutes for competence. Homelessness is not solved by optimism. Childcare is not paid for with hope. We know Johnson cannot deliver because after his massacre of the moderates, he leads the most hard right-wing, ideologically driven nationalist government our country has ever seen. He promises to leave the EU with no deal will hit the North. Nobody with our region's best interests at heart should contemplate it. A falling pound has already pushed prices up for every family's weekly shop. Tariffs will devastate the North's farmers, car makers and banking sector. There will be fewer jobs, less trade, less money for councils who are already seeing their budgets halved. It will limit the opportunities for our children and harm the fight against crime. The cost of the Leeds to Manchester high-speed rail route will be dwarfed by the cost to the North if the UK leaves without a deal. Over $4 billion has already been spent on no-deal planning. No deal means no rail link. The Independent Budget Office for Responsibility predicts that the UK would enter recession next year if there was no deal. Years of austerity have shown what Conservatives do in recession: cut back. Devolution would simply mean fighting for a piece of a much smaller pie. We have 3 months to stop a Prime Minister with no mandate from the British people, elected by just 0.25% of the population. Crashing our country out of the EU with no deal he has no mandate for. As voters, we must follow our regional newspapers and hold this government to account. We cannot allow ourselves to be fed the scraps of a project that was launched 5 years ago. Instead, we must demand the power to ensure its delivery and a government focused on doing so, not one threatening it with a no-deal Brexit. Johnson's Chief of Staff, Dominic Cummings, argued 2 years ago there was a strong democratic case for a confirmatory referendum once the terms of the deal were known. He was right. If you believe in democracy, taking back control and avoiding a disastrous no deal that would harm the Northern Powerhouse, support our call for a people's vote. Let us be heard. That's exactly right. And it will come down to no deal versus remain. And everything that we have put on the table before, and every piece of evidence available, shows that if they hold a confirmatory referendum that basically says, do you want a no deal or to remain, Remain will win. Because no one who voted leave voted for a no deal. Despite how many comments I know I'm going to get below saying that that's what they voted for. No deal was not on the table in the 2016 referendum. Every single person who campaigned for leave all said that they wanted to be like Norway, they wanted to be like Switzerland, and that they wanted to leave with a deal. So, no deal was never, ever discussed. In fact, you can go and check the Google search results for a no deal, because it wasn't discussed until Boris Johnson and co. Resigned from the cabinet. Until then, it was never searched, it was never brought up, no one talked about it, except maybe Patrick Minford. So here we are, being directed towards a no deal which Boris Johnson himself campaigned against.